go ahead and welcome everyone and get this started, this very important event that was born out of the DWMC's Inclusion and Diversity Committee and our co-chairs, our fabulous co-chairs, Jacqueline Simon and Lisa Berkeley. I am Kate Daniels, and I am the president of the Democratic Women of Monterey County. And we formed this committee in 2019 to create a more inclusive and diverse membership base, board of directors, and DWMC community. So before I step back and let the two of them lead this event, which I'm really honored and privileged to do, is to step back and let them step forward, is I just want to extend my gratitude for these two women and the work that they have been engaging in on behalf of the club. You know, we are all committed and fighting for a more inclusive democracy in this nation. And the work that these two women have done has gotten us closer than we've ever been to doing the type of work that will allow us to get there. Since the death of George Floyd and the widespread protests in response to his murder, there have been a lot of actions that have taken place. They've been largely symbolic actions, and that's important, and those actions must be celebrated, but they also must be coupled with concrete policy changes and sustained action over time if we are to truly break down the systems of oppression that exist. The DWMC Club is fully invested in building the inclusive democracy that I was just mentioning, and we do that by resolving deep systemic racism that persists through actions like reimagining policing and future actions that I know will come. From this event forward, something new that we're going to be doing at the Democratic Women of Monterey County is we're going to be opening our meetings and our events with a land acknowledgement. We're doing this as part of an effort to understand better the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on this land. The text of the land acknowledgement that I will read was provided to the Democratic Women of Monterey County by Jana Nason, Tribal Administrator and Secretary of the Esselen Tribe. Like the work that you joined us today to learn more about, it is critical that we acknowledge colonialism and that the land upon which we stand is the ancestral lands of the First Nations people. This is, though, like the work that's been done in advance of today, merely a starting point. The DWMC will be supporting the Esselen Tribe with financial contributions, as well as supporting Indigenous-led grassroots change movements and campaigns in the future. After I read the land acknowledgement, which happens to coincide with my location in Carmel Valley, it's not easy to do things like this on Zoom, my colleague Jacqueline Simon, who is, as I mentioned, co-chair of the Inclusion and Diversity Committee, will speak. So with that, the Democratic Women of Monterey County would like to acknowledge that this event is on the Aboriginal lands of the Esselen ancestors and the lands of many local tribes, which include Esselen, Rumsen, Ohlone, and the Ama Mutsun tribes. Thank you all very much and welcome.
Thank you, Kate Daniels. First, let me say to you, Kate, thank you so very much for your leadership with the Democratic Women of Monterey County. Thank you for deciding, having worked very closely with the board and with Dr. Lisa Berkeley, for creating the Inclusion and Diversity Committee, of which I am a member and proudly here today representing. It is that committee, and with that knowledge, I share with you an opportunity for all of us to learn and hear something to the depths and the core of who we are. And that is to hear a community activist, a revolutionary poet that will share with us what we are absolutely really talking about. Please listen carefully. The words are deep. Be receptive and embrace them. We all can learn from this and evolve and move forward with it. Miss Queen Tay, would you please share your poetry with us today?
Hello, hello. And thank you so much, Jacqueline Simon, for that great introduction. I truly appreciate it. And it's nice to meet everyone here. Thank you so much for pulling this event together. And here's my poem. It's called The Experience of Policing from African American Perception is Nowhere Along the Lines of Their Motto for Service and Protection. More like bullying, abusing, murdering, camouflaged as correction. Anytime an African American complains about excessive force and pain, we are treated as if our skin is a weapon and made out to be the blame. If the police beat, rape, or even murder us, they are given impunity. It seems as if they send the most aggressive and hateful police into the African American community. The police seem to love the idea of being the bad guy, almost having something to prove. According to the proof of the unjust justice system, they get away with anything, so they have nothing to lose. We African Americans are afraid to ever call the police for help or assistance. Our pleas to be served and protected are viewed by police as forms of resistance. In all honesty, the history of police was to hunt, capture, control, and murder the slaves, which seems to be what is still happening now for the so-called free African Americans today. Are we really free when police are not subject to any accountability? Are we really free when our skin is considered a weapon to majority of society? No, we are in mental captivity, and that is killing us physically, and this is not how God created us to be. Now is the time for us to see the urgency of reimagining policing. Who will protect us? United States citizens, taxpayers, and human beings. We need to be able to trust that our rights to live are honored because our lives have significant meaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Queen Tay.
Thank you, Queen Tay. That was so from the heart and so moving. Thank you. We're now going to share the document with you, our Reimagining Policing, a Call to Action. While I'm putting it on our screen for everyone to see as I read it, I just want to also take a moment to acknowledge the process that was gone through on this. It was really as if Jacqueline and I were in kind of a cocoon holding space for Jacqueline to midwife this document. And as it was being birthed, we then included the full DWMC board. Jacqueline will speak more about her experience. It's such an important document, and so from the heart that the time has come, and it's been an honor to be part of birthing this. So on that, I'm going to go ahead and read this. Dear Monterey County representatives, mayors, and city council members, and police academy leaders, in the last few years, we have witnessed the killing by police of Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Sandra Bland, Philandro Castile, Stephen Clark, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, and countless others. The public has said enough. The Democratic Women of Monterey County and the additional supporting agencies, organizations, businesses, and signatories call on our elected officials to tackle the racism that plagues our communities and enact meaningful police reform. There are over 18,000 police departments in the United States of America today. Far too many of them are a danger to communities of color, particularly African Americans. People in these communities cannot look to the police for protection. An entire segment of the US population, 47.8 million people, African Americans, feel unsafe, each and every day. Across the country, people are waking up to this reality. The protests in support of Black Lives Matter are teaching us that police reform is urgently needed and essential to the well-being of the country as a whole. Racial and ethnic diversity in America is a strength. Our economy would work for everyone, not just a few. All of us should feel safe in our homes, when we walk in the street, and while we go about our daily lives. There must be one standard of justice for everyone. As a step in the right direction, we applaud California Senator Ana Caballero for introducing SB 230, which was signed into law in 2019. That legislation raised the standard for police use of deadly force and requires police departments, effective January 2021, to provide training for police officers that will improve policing throughout California. Recently introduced into federal legislation, the Justice of Policing Act of 2020, sponsored by Karen Bass and Gerald Nadler, and co-sponsored by our Congressman Jimmy Pimenta, among others, and sponsored by Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, also deserve support. Here in Monterey County, as in the rest of the country, we must reimagine the way in which law enforcement interacts with the public. It is time to put the public back in public safety by reforming policing. It is also necessary to invest in programs that meet public health needs, such as the treatment for mental illness and substance abuse. Accordingly, we submit the following recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, mayors, and city councils throughout Monterey County and law enforcement training programs. We emphasize the importance of implementing the SB 230 policing reforms. In particular, we call on our public officials to commit to and begin implementing the following policy goals throughout the county. Number one, a new model of policing that includes prevention, intervention, appropriate enforcement, and a process where equitable amounts of funding are provided for each of these areas when policing our city, streets, and nation must be put into place. When addressing public health and safety issues such as mental illness, substance abuses, homelessness, and domestic violence, Monterey County's Crisis Intervention Training Program, conceived after the deadly shooting of Charles Vaughn Sr., should be expanded to allow for increased trainings per year so that people in crisis always get the care and help they need. Number two, ongoing and regular training must be provided to officers in order to develop strong interpersonal and communication skills, cross-cultural understanding, awareness of one's implicit biases, and an understanding of mental illness. Number three, police academies should teach best practices for community policing. Our law enforcement agencies should evaluate the effectiveness of the best practices they employ on a consistent and regular basis and use the insights gained to realize ongoing improvement in public safety and police-community relations. Number four, police departments must teach officers how to de-escalate a violent situation. Law enforcement agencies must require officers to wear and activate their body cameras at each and every call. Failure to do so must have consequences. Number six, police officers must be held accountable for their actions. To this end, we will support legislation to end qualified immunity that has protected officers from being held accountable for excessive use of force, including shooting and killing members of the public. Number seven, an honest conversation with police association unions about their role in preventing officers from being held accountable for misconduct must be had. We must demand that they socialize the standards of community protection set forth in SB 230 and learn how to partner with communities and health professionals. It is the duty of our local leaders to encourage this transformation. Number eight, we recognize that officers must be able to protect themselves when responding to a call or engaging with the public. However, military-grade equipment instills fear and conveys a message of power over rather than one of trust and safety. For this reason, among others, law enforcement agencies should not acquire or use military equipment unless there is a clear-cut need for it. Number nine, each community or the county as a whole must establish a task force to recommend and monitor implementation of the reforms discussed above and other reforms required by SB 230 including elimination of the chokehold and procedures to prevent the hiring of police officers with a history of misconduct. The Democratic Women of Monterey County and the other signatories to this letter encourage the county sheriff and city police departments throughout Monterey County to embrace these recommendations, end the use of excessive force by police, and transform the relationship between police and communities, particularly communities of color, so that all of our residents can look to police for protection rather than be fearful of them. On a final note, before I turn this back over, the signatories that have joined on, which you can do at our website, DWMC.org, will be listed towards the end of the month. Thank you. Jacqueline?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Lisa. And my goodness, thank you for reading that letter in the manner in which you did. We worked long and hard on that, all of us. The board of directors, the DWMC, all members, and of course you and I spent quality time evolving and editing and making sure everything was included by everyone. I'm hoping that everyone that hears those words, as well as may have an opportunity to download the letter and read it again, that it helps you to understand the importance and the seriousness time that we are in right now. This is our moment, though. I'm hopeful that this is our moment, though, to make a difference in the lives of everyone. It's just a good thing to be able to make sure that a community, any and all communities, are safe. And I want to make sure that my nephew doesn't have to worry about the police when he sees them. He should feel that he can run to them for help as opposed to running away from them for help. That's full stop a conversation I've had with him and so many other young people, people of color, in addition to African Americans, just everyone, particularly minorities in the minority community. But as I said earlier, I do feel hopeful because I see a movement across this nation and the world from two major groups that keep me faithful that we can do something better. One group is the millennials. Full stop. I love you. Thank you for standing up for everyone when others didn't have the courage to. International people across the pond, across the nation and the globe have stood up like two stereos in concert with this very important issue that they get and understand needs attention. So I'm so hopeful and thankful for those two groups. The rest of us, I want us to look at how we can embrace some of these areas that I know can help us become a better community. It is with that note that I want to close by saying, Dr. Lisa Berkeley, thank you so much for working with me during these very emotional at times to put to paper so that we can share with the community just how important this was for us, but the awesome opportunity that we had with it. Thank you for your compassion and understanding that as well. On that note, I would like to really, sit here and think, my goodness, I'm going to introduce someone who I think absolutely rocks. Senator Ana Caballero. I've known you for 20 years or maybe longer, and you've always been out there in the community helping and assisting us in efforts that we need to have and put serious time and effort towards. I want to read a little bit about our senator. Please listen carefully. The voters of Senate District 12 elected Ana M. Caballero in November 2018 to the Senate, which includes all of Merced, San Benito counties, the Salinas Valley, and portions of Fresno, Madera, and Stanislaus counties. Senator Caballero began her career by providing legal services to farm workers, and then she founded a nonprofit organization to reduce gang violence. She served as a city council member and a mayor of Salinas, and as a state assembly member. In 2011, she joined Governor Brown's cabinet as a Secretary of Business and Consumer Services, as well as the Housing Agency. Senator Caballero focuses her policy goals on water, economic development, poverty, and housing. She tirelessly fights for rural California. She pursues policies to improve the lives of families, farmers, workers, seniors, and children. Senator Caballero, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know that you are en route to another event, but thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was a wonderful introduction, and I appreciate it very, very much. I appreciate our friendship and all the work that you are doing, and I want to thank you and the DWMC for your advocacy for change, and more importantly, your call to action. I'm so happy to join you here today and to really focus on the call to action, because I think this day, this time calls for us to be willing to do something in order to make the change that we want. And so I'm very honored to join you. And I was asked to talk about the actions that have taken place legislatively in California within the past year. And as you know, the coronavirus has changed how we're all doing business, and the legislature is really no different. We followed the governor's shelter-in-place order beginning in March, and so we closed our physical locations, but all of the senators and their staff have worked from home. And I want to say that because we're there, we're working, and if people have issues that they're concerned about, please call our office. We're returning to Sacramento tomorrow to finish the last month of our legislative session, and we're going to be voting on a number of bills that focus on police reform and reducing the implicit and the explicit bias in police interactions that have led to injury or death. And we've heard the Black Lives Matter movement, and the deaths of so many Black men and women have fundamentally changed our country, and they have fundamentally changed our state, and will result in change in terms of how we interact with each other, and in terms of how the police departments operate. But and it takes all of our activism in order to make that happen. So you'll undoubtedly hear more about the bills that we're going to be looking at in the upcoming month. But I was asked to talk a little bit about SB 230, and I'm happy to do that. I authored this bill last year, and it was signed by Governor Newsom, and it took some of the best practices that we have adopted in other communities and other states, and put them all together. And it's my belief that our rules now about police conduct are the most progressive in the nation. And what the bill does is as you said earlier, someone said earlier, it raises the standard for police use of deadly force, but it requires new training on alternative methods for getting cooperation, such as de-escalation techniques and distance type of techniques, strategies that protect the officer as well as the public. It requires training and understanding implicit and explicit bias and how it affects decision making. There's a requirement for police officers to intervene if they see another officer using excessive force, and it requires that that officer report the incident to their supervisors, and it requires the supervisors to document and begin an investigation about the allegations. There's a requirement to render speedy medical aid if there's an injury that occurs, and a requirement that the police officer standards training, which is the post, they're the ones that do all of the training for police officers in the state, make the changes in their procedure manual, in their processes, and redo the training so that all of these changes can be retaught, and every single officer that works in the state of California has to be retrained, and the departments, so that includes all of the sheriff offices and the police offices, have to begin implementing the changes by January 1st of next year, so that's 2021. And Post has already completed the guidelines, and they will be posted. Well, August is this coming week. They're going to be posted in August, and all of the police departments will be required to update their procedure manual so that they can take corrective action that's required if their officers, once they receive the training, don't follow the new procedures and the guidelines. So this is all really important because it will fundamentally change. It should fundamentally change. And if there are officers that don't follow these new procedures, then there will be consequences that are going to be required. So the call to action, from my perspective, is to ask people to contact the local police and sheriff department to get an update on what their compliance is, whether they've redone their procedures, their internal manual. Every time an officer is trained, they're required to pass their classes, and then when they get signed on with the police department, they agree to follow all of the procedures. And so that's one of the oaths they take. And so all of us have something we can do to make the change in our communities that we want to see and that we desperately need. And so it starts with all of us. So there's action that we can all take to make sure that our local police departments are making the changes internally that they need, and that there's a commitment from the chief of police or the sheriff to start the implementation. So it's not, this is really important, but it's not enough to ask that only the police accept change, which they must because it's the law now. We must be willing to really study the roots of racism and classism, sexism, and the intolerance of immigrants or the bias against the LGBT community, and really learn about our differences in order to develop a sense of understanding and to deal with our own explicit and implicit biases as well. And so I want to encourage people to think about, we're requiring college students to take ethnic studies courses, and I think it might be a good idea for us to do that kind of work within our community just generally, because I think there's a lot more we can do to learn and to have a little bit more understanding about the differences among us, and really some of the things that are exactly the same. You know, my experience is that if you learn about a community that's different than yourself, you'll realize that they're really much more alike than you think. Then thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Anna.
Senator Caballero, thank you so much. It's been an honor having you with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I truly continue to be humbled by your tireless work and being a consistent voice of dignity for the people. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Senator Bill Monning. Now, before I begin with highlights from Senator Monning's career in public service, I want to take a moment and personally thank him. During my graduate studies work at Middlebury Institute, he was a professor who led through compassion and care and exemplified activism for human rights. And it's been wonderful to see him apply these same values to his work as a public servant. So now the professional part. Senator Manning was elected to California State Senate in 2012, and he represents the 17th State Senate District, which includes all of San Luis Obispo and Santa Cruz counties and portions of Monterey and Santa Clara counties. It was an especially exciting time for our district between 2015 and 2018 when he served as the Senate Majority Leader. Prior to serving in the Senate, Senator Manning represented the 27th Assembly District, where he was instrumental in establishing the California Health Benefits Exchange, a key component in providing access to affordable health care for all people in California. Last session, Senator Manning introduced Senate Bill 623 to provide short and long-term drinking water solutions to Californians who lack access to safe and affordable drinking water. One of Senator Manning's additional accomplishments has been protecting farm workers. In 2014, his bill SB 1087 to protect California farm workers from sexual harassment and violence was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown. While we're sad to see Senator Manning leave office at the end of this year, we, the DWMC, will be supportive and involved in his newest initiative, Healthy California. Thank you, Senator, and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate that kind introduction, and I'm so proud to watch you since your years at the Monterey Institute, now Middlebury Institute, and your work now both with the Democratic Women of Monterey County, but also as an elected member of the Marina City Council. And I also want to extend my thanks to Jacqueline and Kate, to all the board of DWMC. I appreciated Queen Tay's poetry, and I'm looking forward to hearing from Vanessa and Tatiana and the representative from Congressman Panetta's office. It's also great to join with my colleague, Ana Caballero. Ana and I go back to work together at California Rural Legal Assistance in the early 1980s and have collaborated and intersected in our careers now for, I guess, several decades. So it's always great to be with Ana, and now we all have to accept Zoom meetings, but looking forward to when we can re-engage. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Ana said, first applauding her leadership on Senate Bill 230, that, as she mentioned, was signed into law last year. And the companion bill to that was Assembly Bill 392 by Shirley Weber, Assemblywoman Weber from San Diego, that provided transformative criteria that is now law regarding the use of lethal force by police officers. That law was opposed by most of law enforcement as intruding on their province and in their way of doing business, but it introduces criteria that in the review of any use of lethal force, the totality of all circumstances will be taken into consideration, and a police officer can be held liable both civilly and criminally if they violate the standards, the new standards on use of lethal force. Certainly through the years and through the decades, we have faced tragedies in our community, around the country, of use of excessive and lethal force, predominantly or largely excessively against people of color and against African American communities. The death, the murder of George Floyd catalyzed, unlike any other prior tragedy, a global movement that continues to move forward in advancing not only law change and law reform, but public thinking, community prioritization of police budgets. And today, as we talk about the leadership of the Democratic Women of Monterey County in advancing the reimagining of policing, I want to applaud DWMC for taking this on as a priority. I want to mention just a couple of the historic movements in Monterey County, the formation of the Charles Vaughn Sr. Task Force on Mental Health and Police Practices in 1998, after the shooting and murder of Charles Vaughn Sr., who was mentally ill and suffering from a psychotic episode, shot down in his own home in Seaside. A tragedy that could have been prevented. That led to the formation of the crisis intervention team approach to law enforcement in Monterey County, working with behavioral health and mental health experts in trying to de-escalate situations. And one of the things we don't have good metrics on is measuring how many other lethal events have perhaps been prevented through the years because of that training and that commitment in Monterey County. As pointed out in the program put forth by Lisa, we need to make sure that that program remains at the forefront of Monterey County policing, both in funding and commitment to training, that it should be mandatory, not voluntary, and it should extend to all police departments in Monterey County. I think the other thing I just wanted to touch on, so much of our focus after the murder of George Floyd has been police engagement with our communities, reimagining policing, reprioritizing funding from militarization of communities to investment in social services, behavioral health, mental health services, and other programs of social uplift. I believe that as we talk about systemic racism, we're not just discussing police practices and racism manifest in policing in our communities. When we talk about systemic racism, we're talking about, in addition to law enforcement, access to housing, to jobs, to healthcare, to mental health services, to drug treatment services, to access to all services and to all opportunities, the level playing field that's talked about in our Constitution, but has not yet been fully realized. I'd also just comment something that Anna said. We can pass laws often. We do that in response to community organizing, but it's not just the passage of the law, it's the monitoring of it and its implementation that we at the community level must also continue to work. We work to pass the law, then we have to work on its implementation. I'd also like to just close with acknowledging too the linkage with environmental racism and so much of the pillars of our capitalist economy, the pillars of the formation of this country, built on the backs of enslaved people, built on racism, built on sexism, and that as we move forward and see the very survival of our planet threatened, environmental racism teaches us as we study that it is communities of color and impoverished communities that are more often at risk today from environmental pollution and face the greatest risk from the climate crisis. The water bill that you mentioned that now moves $1.3 billion into 300 communities in California to provide the human right of clean, safe drinking water, a human right that most of us take for granted, is being deprived to over 1 million Californians. But it's through community organizing, rising up against the systemic racism that has led to that deprivation. It's the same fight that we fight in implementing and advancing the reimagining of policing in Monterey County through the leadership of the Democratic women of Monterey County. And I'd be derelict if I didn't acknowledge those who have organized in the past, the Civil Rights Coalition of Monterey County, the Charles Vaughn Sr. Coalition on Mental Health and Police Practices, the ACLU, the National Lawyers Guild, the NAACP, LULAC, and so many others who have been champions in these fights through the years. And we take strength and we're fortified now by the engagement of young people, of a next generation that envisions futures for our families, for workers, and for all that are built on equity and fairness. So thank you again for the opportunity to join you this afternoon.
Jacqueline, you're on mute. I don't want anyone to miss a single word you're saying.
There we go. Am I unmuted now? Can
Perfect.
everyone hear me? Great. Thank you, President Daniels. That's why you're the president, making sure we're all staying on time, task, and target, and so that people can hear us. All jokes aside, Bill, you are one of my favorite people in life. I've known you over, I don't know, 15, 20 years since some of the original work you've done. You always rose to the occasion. You never not took a phone call. You always attended and participated. You were there for us in the community. Like Ana Caballero, you two are two of my favorite people in life, and you're definitely both on my Christmas list. So please know that, and that's all from my heart. With that,
Thank you,
I will.
Jacqueline. It takes one to know one. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, sir. I now want to introduce one of our speakers, our millennials, Monica Tran Kim. She's a human rights advocate. She's a person that has been in the community doing a lot of wonderful work. She's been waiting online in between work hours right now, and I would like to give her that opportunity to share. Monica Tran Kim, please share with us.
When I was a young girl, the police were called on my parents when they were practicing their religious beliefs. Rebuilding and reshaping de-escalation procedures to become a first instinct could mean the difference between life and death when misunderstanding occurs between a caller making a report and a dispatcher taking the call, especially for families that do not speak English or are afraid to talk to the police. Police are pillars of support in our most difficult time, but my words are not mutual. Two families wondering if body cameras are operating to capture the truth for them. The goal of better policing is producing a less fractured community. To shield those that have a detailed record committing abuse of power will only fracture families further, such as families who lost their sole earner in the household due to police brutality, or a young adult killed by police brutality who would have brought economic stability for parents retiring. The dehumanization of people of all races and all ages start when we have become numb to each new death adding to the toll. Revitalizing the approach and use of de-escalation, accountability, and body cameras will restore the factors of compassion for those within our communities that are mentally ill, homeless, or have lost their way. These individuals can also transform to become pillars of support in their community. Due to the spirit, effort, and time we have all sacrificed to stand up for our neighbors, friends, and strangers, we will be the catalyst for systemic changes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. You've worked so hard on so much in the community. Appreciate you, and thank you for taking time out of your work schedule to be with us today. Now we are going to have two wonderful people. They both are rock stars to me. One is an educator, and that's Vanessa Robinson. The other is a very informative, and I would say woke, young person that we can learn from. Please, Tatiana and Vanessa, can you share, please?
All right. Hello, everyone. What an honor to be on this call with you all. Thank you for that introduction, Jacqueline. So we'll start with Tatiana. She is, I would definitely say, woke. Share with us just what are some of your thoughts you have right now about what's happening with policing in America today?
I feel sad, mad, disappointed, and upset because these police officers are not doing their job. They are coming into houses, shooting people, dragging people out of their cars just for no reason. The police officers' behavior is not good.
Okay, and what are some thoughts you have around like fears involving, you know, your family's interactions with police officers or people of color who look like you?
I feel really scared for my family that's going through the same thing that I'm going through.
Right now, their experiences with police officers, and what are some hopes you have? How do you want to see change take place in America around policing in the future for your generation specifically?
When I grow up, I hope that the police officers have learned their lesson for what they have done.
And what about safety and you interacting in the community with police officers?
And I wish when I call them, they could actually help me.
Yeah, that's profound. And that's something that, you know, as an educator with the same age group of kids, I've been realizing, you know, over the past 10 years, a lot of this generation carries these same sentiments around what does it mean to be policed by police officers in our communities. A lot of groundbreaking literature has been published in recent years as well, which are young adult novels, and that kind of speaks to the notion that it really isn't up to us anymore. I know my experience as police officers probably are going to continue to be the influence on how I feel, but around literature and ethnic studies and legislations like these, we can hopefully change the perception of policing for, you know, the young generation like Tatiana, I feel. And I hope that it's not too late to change how she feels and my students feel about exactly what she said, being able to call the police and anticipate that they are going to show up to solve a problem rather than create a larger problem. So yeah, I'm proud of her and the young activism work she's doing as well, though, and speaking up at such a young age and taking on this challenge today to speak to you all, and thank you all for listening as well.
Okay. So next up we have John Assini, who is from the office of Congressman Jimmy Panetta. He is the senior legislative assistant who focuses on legislation focused around policing. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about that and share some words from Congressman Panetta's office. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Jacqueline, for putting together this event. I also want to thank Senator Caballero and Senator Monning for their words today and their service to the community. I know that Mr. Panetta is very grateful for the work that you guys have done over the years and continue to do for the Central Coast of California. Again, my name is John Assini. I am the Senior Legislative Assistant for Congressman Jimmy Panetta. I focus on immigration issues, healthcare issues, justice issues, and policing issues. Due to the congressional legislative schedule and a previously scheduled commitment at this time, Congressman Panetta is unable to attend this press conference. However, Congressman Panetta asked that I read the following statement on his behalf, and he greatly appreciates that you have convened this press conference to talk about such a pressing issue. Thanks to the Democratic Women of Monterey County and all that they do for our community, organizations like the DWMC are needed now more than ever, as together we are enduring a difficult time across our nation. The horrific death of George Floyd and so many others at the hands of officers entrusted to do what's right validates and accentuates what's wrong with our systems of justice and social governance. As we emerge from a bruising pandemic with the loss of over 140,000 lives and 40 million jobs, we share just not our deep sympathies, but also many vulnerabilities, including our nation's wide disparities and systemic inequalities. The grisly COVID-19 pandemic highlights the lack of health insurance, high incidence of asthma, diabetes, and obesity, and the likelihood of death from the disease in certain populations of color, and demonstrates the vulnerability and inequality of millions of people in our country. The numerous peaceful protests throughout our nation, including here on the Central Coast of California, are merited, meaningful, and reflect the mistreatment of people of color for decades. However, we can't just be angry and reactive. We can't just rely on stating the problems. We must be progressive, proactive, and actually do the work to get to the solutions. And it's time to put the substance over slogans. As my former colleague, John Lewis, the conscience of Congress, the conscience of this country, would say, there is no substitute for substance. We must work together with the substance to find the solutions to change historical and structural racism and reform the culture and training of law enforcement so that George Floyd is not just another name in the long list of those who could have died. As your federal representative, I continue to do my job and work legislatively at the federal level to actuate change in our legal and law enforcement systems. Although no single bill will erase systemic racism, it's past time for Congress to create structural changes within our law enforcement system with meaningful legislation. 1 month ago, we in the House passed the pivotal and substantial George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. This comprehensive bill will hold police misconduct accountable, improve transparency of policing by establishing a national public police misconduct registry, improve police training and policies. And this legislation includes bills that I have co-sponsored before that would restrict the use of force by police officers, limiting the military transfer of military equipment to police departments, mandate training on racial bias and the duty to intervene, reform the qualified immunity precedent, ban no-knock warrants in drug cases, and ban chokeholds that officers cannot able to use anymore. Now that bill is with the Senate, and that is why we must keep the pressure on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to act on this important legislation. If not, we must hold those accountable that refuse to act. In the meantime, you can become a citizen co-sponsor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act by adding your name to the official congressional record by visiting this website, which is justiceinpolicing.us. Again, that's justiceinpolicing.us. And please know that the Justice and Policing Act is just the start of the next chapter in civil rights. There will be more to come. My colleagues in Congress and I understand they have a responsibility to focus on legislation at the federal level to enact real change. And as I do my job, please continue speaking out, standing up, and continuing this fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And I'm really pleased that Congressman Panetta was able to participate, even though not in person, and that you were here. I'm very conscious of the time, and in particular, our senators' time and our participants' time. We are over time. So what I would like to do is just make one more statement, very short, and then let our guests leave. And then what Lisa and Jacqueline and I can do is stay on for a little bit longer and answer any questions that members of the public had for us about this initiative. But I don't want to hold our guests up any longer than they committed to being here. And with that, I want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers, and again to Jacqueline Simon and Lisa Berkeley, our co-chairs, Senator Monning, Senator Caballero, and our Congressman Jimmy Panetta. I'm always profoundly grateful that we have this kind of representation in Monterey County, and that we have representatives who are receptive to what we're talking about here today. Not only are they receptive, they're leaders. You know, they've been fighting this fight for decades. Senator Caballero and Senator Monning. I love what Congressman Panetta said in his statement, that this is just the beginning. This is just the start. But the fact that we are talking as a community-wide about systems of oppression and about systemic and structural racism is a major start and a major opportunity that we cannot lose out on. So I'm so grateful to my colleagues at the DWMC. This is just the beginning, and I'm proud to be part of what the congressman called proactive work. That's what we need right now. And I'm just deeply grateful to everyone who was on this call today, to our elected officials, our community members, and to the Democratic Women of Monterey County. It's a proud moment, and I thank you all so much. So with that, we'll let our fabulous, amazing guests go. And I want to keep the chat open and answer any questions that anyone from the community has. So we'll go from there. So with that, if any of our panelists would like to jump off, they're welcome to, but you're also welcome to stay on. We're just so grateful for you all to be here. Let's see, moving to the panel, the questions. Did anybody from the audience have a question either in the Q&A or in the chat for us to answer at this point in time? And if not, that's okay too.
I don't see any questions right now. Okay, so no questions. If you wanted to raise your hand, you can go ahead and raise your hand in your participant box. Okay, we're getting comments.
We have one hand. Is it possible to allow Carissa Mann to speak?
Yep, hold on one moment. And then there's a comment also from, so David Burnett typed in the text, he said, thank you, DWMC, how can we keep the focus? All right, so we'll answer that, and let's give Carissa Mann the chance to speak. Hi, Carissa.
While you're getting her up and running, I'm just going to say to David that, you know, what we try to attempt to do here is create a pathway that is good guidance that can be taken to our supervisors and our city council members. And we can work to continue to move these recommendations forward and to build upon what already exists in Monterey County. And funding is at the heart, of course, of all of that. Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
I think, hold on one second. I'm just monitoring some more questions, but we have, well, there's more we can add to what you're saying, but I think that we just called on Carissa, so why don't we go ahead and jump on in with your question, Carissa.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm glad I was able to listen today. I've been following along, you know, with things happening. Lisa knows my name. I haven't actually met her in person, but I live in Marina. So I've been checking in with mostly the Marina Council to see how we're going to respond to everything that's going on. And so I'm glad to see this progress being made. I just wanted to make sure that I fully understand. So I read through it. Is the proposal specifically, are they all related to the SB 230, or are there additional things in this proposal?
I'm going to let Lisa and Jacqueline respond, but it is that there are additional elements of this proposal that are beyond SB.
Okay. And then how are we hoping to implement these changes in our cities?
I'd like to share that as President Kate Daniels shared in the beginning, we need to make sure we're talking to our city council members, the Monterey County Board of Supervisors. Seriously, our sheriff, our chiefs of police, and the community really needs to get involved and seriously keep the pressure on. At the end of the day, that horrific experience that all of us saw should motivate us to continue to not feel that we can't do that. We must do that. And that, Carissa, and I thank you for your question. You sound like a doer. We definitely want you involved. So please stay connected with us. We're going to make this happen. One other very important area that I believe is so important, Mitch McConnell. Doesn't matter to me what politics anyone has, but we need to put the pressure on this representative to work with Congressman Panetta and others to make some legislative change. Because as President Daniels shared, the systemic and structural racism has been here forever, It's actually been here since 400 years for me and my relatives. But at the end of the day, we can do something now. I'm hopeful, I'm ready, and I would love to have anyone that hears this today to participate with us. We have a website, DWMC website. Please come online. Please participate in our inclusion and diversity committee projects, because this is for the people. Thank you.
So I would just like to add to that, as far as moving this forward, because there have been a number of questions about where are we going and what's the next process. So right now we're trying to get as many signatories as possible. Probably within the next month or so, we'll be putting out a full page ad in the paper with the list of signatories, and then we'll be submitting it to the Board of Supervisors, as well as local city councils. And that's through all of the cities around Monterey County, because this really is a holistic, full regional county initiative that we're hoping to see put into place. Let's see, and I don't, so I'm just looking.
Got another question by Gabriela Chavez. Can you permit talking so Gabriela can ask your question?
Gabriela, you need to unmute yourself now.
Hi there. Hello, I'll take this moment to introduce myself to all of you amazing women on the screen that I see right now. I see Ms. Jacqueline C. Simon, Kate Daniels, and Lisa Berkeley. My name is Gabriela Chavez, and I'm actually running for a seat in the Monterey City Council this year. I'm a young Democrat. I'm 28 years old, and I am really excited to get involved in further in the work that you've already been laying the groundwork in. I've also, as you guys have been saying, I'm just a concerned citizen that's been organizing kind of on the grassroots level, and I decided to throw my hat into the political process, the electoral process. And sorry, I'm getting a little bit excited, but I guess my question would be directed toward exactly, yeah, what, as someone who's going to, hopefully be on the city council. I know Vanessa Robinson, who is also on the call, is kind of in the same situation. She's wants to be part of the new generation of leadership in City Council of Salinas. What we can do as young women leaders, like right now, whether we get elected or not, to basically integrate all of these things at a grassroots level right now.
Lisa, can I take a stab at that?
Sure.
Because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot in this era. One thing that the Democratic Women of Monterey County do is we do endorse candidates. And one of the things that this moment has inspired in us at the Democratic Women of Monterey County is to change the culture of campaigning. I think that this moment really speaks to the opportunity we have to change the way we run campaigns as well. When Senator Monning was talking about all of the injustices, whether it was environmental injustice or economic injustice or racism or what's occurring in policing, I think we have more friends than foes in this movement. And so one of the things that the Democratic Women of Monterey County are going to be focusing on in our endorsement process is the candidates that are willing to go big for the civil rights that we've discussed today. Because one of the things we believe as Democrats and that we believe as the Democratic Women of Monterey County is that an inclusive democracy, not only was that the vision for our democracy, that is the future that will benefit everyone, not just the people in power who happen to be at the table. We are building a democracy that works for everyone. So my recommendation in light of this moment and this movement to anybody running for office is basically go big or go home. You have enough friends in this movement to speak to them and to be an authentic candidate who represents the values that we all hold. And so we're going to be reimagining our endorsement process as well to ensure that authenticity is a requirement in those that we endorse. Jacqueline.
Absolutely ditto. Thank you, Kate. That was excellent. But for our future hopeful council member there that is throwing her hat in the ring, let me tell you, I threw my hat in the ring 14 years ago in this county, and I am very proud to say that I am the only African-American female that has been on this board of majority all Caucasian males. I have no problem with Caucasian males. I'm just saying sometimes they don't look at me and treat me like I want to be treated, which is with equality and respect. So I've had to throw the gauntlet down a few times, and now they are very good about this. And if any of them are on board, thank you for supporting me in that role. They did and are. I am currently elected the Vice President of North Monterey County Fire Protection and Safety for 120 square, I want to say miles, 120 square miles of responsibility, 8 communities. A lot of the communities are the poor communities. So representation is very, very important to me. So what I want you to do, or anyone out there, if you are about making change, if you are about standing up and doing something about this right now, today, here, with this concern, please feel free to be in touch with us. I would love you to participate in some of the think tank discussions we're having. I don't mind, I am busy, but I don't mind mentoring you. If you would like that, I have several people that have gotten in touch with me recently to do that. You don't have to be African American, but if you are, please get in touch. We are there. Join the Democratic Women of Monterey County. It is a new and improved version from the past, and I love it. So please feel free to stay in touch with us. Gabriella.
Okay, thank you. There's a few things I want to, and I see that Zoe Carter has her hand up. Again, I'm a little bit sensitive of time, so I'm going to try and move us along a little bit more. Audra has made a very good point, and we probably should have announced it in the beginning of this conversation, is that Vanessa Robinson, who is the aunt, depending on your word choice, of Tatiana, who was the young 10-year-old girl who so beautifully articulated her concerns, is also running for city council. She in Salinas, I believe. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And she's a dynamic woman that's been doing a lot of work with IND and will continue Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and throughout all of DWMC, she's getting more and more involved. And so we want to just give her a shout out. I'm sorry she's not here to be shouted out and honored and let her speak herself, but I did want to acknowledge that. So let's see, that was Audra's concern. So Timothy Barrett had asked, how do you suggest moving this through our local jurisdictions? Well, I think we covered that pretty much.
Yeah, and he recognized that.
Okay, great. Okay, great. And then is there a playbook of sort available that we can use as an act to be as active as possible? I think that was actually covered by a lot of what's been discussed already. Come get involved with us. You can either send an email directly to inclusion@dw-mc.org. That's inclusion. And I think Kate's about to write it in the chat, so you'll get it there. That's terrific. Thank you. And what else? Let's see. So Audra, I'm gonna, if you are good with this, I'm gonna allow you to speak because you've got a lot of text here, and it'll probably be quicker to have you just speak what you've got written if there's something you want to comment or add.
So we'll do Audra, Lisa, and then Zoe, and then that will be the closure, I believe.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Oh, she's got no mic. Okay. So I'm going to quickly then read through what she's got. Isn't Vanessa Robinson running for City Council in Salinas, District 6? Okay, yes, there we go. We covered that. So it's City Council in Salinas, District 6. And Audra's giving a shout out to acknowledge that Black women like her are running for office because it's a huge part of keeping Black voices centered with respect, direct representation, and experiences in policing Black and brown folks. Right on, right on. So yes, there we go. All right, thank you, Audra. And then Zoe Carter, who I believe is also running for a position. And thank you, Gabriella. We hope we'll hear from you soon. Okay, Zoe.
Good afternoon. My name is Zoe Carter, and I am also running for City Council in Monterey and the proud chair of the Architecture Review Committee there. And I am wondering if we wanted to engage our police departments on this work and sort of begin the ball rolling, would that be something that the DWMC would encourage at this point? I'm also a proud member already of the DWMC, and I love your work and your weekly or monthly luncheons that you do. I appreciate what you've been doing and pivoting during this time. It's been great to be able to still be engaged with you all. So I think if we can start the ball rolling now that you've laid out your goals, that would be awesome too. Thank you.
So maybe I'll just give a quick comment on that about the policing. So one of the things that actually the Marina Democratic Club is in a process of is discussing policing and building trust at communities of color. And we've actually been working with an organization called NACOL, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, and talking about what does a civilian oversight committee look like, and how would we work with our police department and the police unions to craft something that is really inclusive and focused on inclusion and diversity and fair and equitable treatment and within communities. And so it's actually quite a long process that we're looking at because we really want to do this well and do it right and educate our community. And so I would encourage you to start to have something like that within your own community. That's one step. And then of course, going and bringing this letter not only to our city, your city council, but also to your police departments. But as was discussed by our senators and congressmen, as representative, there are many things that are changing at the state level. And we don't want to see municipalities or the county spending a lot of money unnecessarily only to have to change it based on the changes in policies. So I think when you ask how to get involved with the police, it's also reach out to your police officers, to your police chief, talk with him or her. There are a lot of her police chiefs around nowadays, which is phenomenal. And start the conversation. And I would say one last thing before turning this over to either Kate or Jacqueline if they want to do it. And that's about how the approach that we take. And really, when we talk about being inclusive, it's really to be inclusive of the police department in transformation. We want to be able to honor the people who are doing the work, because the bad apples within police force, they've kind of tainted it for some really good police officers. We're talking, these are generational changes that we're starting now. And so in your approaches going to them, go, from that place, from the place of inclusion and from engagement in a positive way. You'll get much more benefits from that in really moving this conversation forward. So thank you for your question, Zoe.
Certainly. My last question, actually, it's more of a statement, probably. We need to be powerful, peaceful, and persistent. That's a mantra I've always had all my life. My parents taught me that. They said that's the way you can get things done. So Mom and Dad, hopefully looking down upon me now, hope you're proud that we are just doing that. And we're doing it academically. I'm a professor, so I believe we should always stay on time, on task, and on target. And we should have our academic and research and information available for us and for those of you that want to join us in this life-changing event in time. I thought when I worked on Barack Obama's campaigns, both of them, and was blessed to be invited to the inaugural, and I know Joe Biden and I know Barack Obama, I thought that was the greatest and most wonderful thing for me in my life. I believe that this election we have coming is equally life-changing. So for all of those of you that are here today and have listened and or have read our letter, please go to it. Please be a signatory, because in numbers of signatures, people will look at it as a very serious thing that the voters, their constituents, if you will, are interested in. And in closure, I just want us to do as John Lewis would say, let's all get in some really good trouble. I'm down for that.
Here's to good trouble. Thank you, everyone, for being with us.
Lisa, will you pop the link for them to sign the letter into the chat, just so folks can click on it there? And I'm not going to say anything more because Jacqueline's closing was perfect and right on target.
So just quickly, there is the letter, and at the bottom of the page, there is the button to become a signatory and to join us in this call to action. So, all right. Oh, and then could you, last shout out to Tanisha Dunn, also running for Seaside City Council as well. All right. Mm-hmm. Fabulous, powerful, beautiful women. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.